Hi, I'm Sam Manelski. I'm a U.S. history teacher at Loyola Blakefield in Towson, Maryland, and I'm here to talk to you as part of the FlipTech 2020 conference about how my course, how I teach my AP class with a flipped classroom model, and how that helped my students when school went down in the spring due to the COVID pandemic, and how distance learning was kind of smoothed out through the system. All right, so what I really want to talk about is why I moved to the flipped classroom in the first place. I've been flipping my class until 2015, how it works, how it worked when we transitioned to distance learning, and then kind of what I'm planning to kind of freshen up and rethink some of the stuff that I've been doing and kind of trying to improve the course and the technologies and everything that I use along with the course. Okay. So first, I started with flipped classroom in 2015. My school is going to one-to-one, and I was going to be teaching a pilot section of one-to-one U.S. history. I spent some time, we'd gone to some conferences, and my colleague and I had gotten really excited about the idea of flipped classroom and a self-paced model for a flipped classroom. Right? So these are sophomore U.S. history students, 10th grade, and we recorded our lectures, put them on YouTube, had the kids, they would watch them, they'd work on stuff independently in class. Honestly, I didn't love the self-paced model, so I moved back to a more kind of paced along with me. A lot of sophomore boys had trouble with the idea that self-paced means there had to be a pace. So we decided, and I decided to move on to try to make flipped classroom work. I really believed in the system. I really believed in the way it worked, and I thought it had a lot of promise. And then I started teaching A-Push the next school year, and as we transitioned to one-to-one, we really wanted to make sure that the technology is being used for everything it can be used for. And the thing with A-Push is many people have taken it. It's a ton of content. It's a ton of material. It's basically everything in U.S. history from pre-Columbus to the present day. That's a lot of stuff to cover in a shortened school year, right? Because the AP exam happens normally in mid-May, and our school year ends in June, right? So I'd get a lot of stuff in to make sure the guys were going to be prepared for their AP exam. And I found the first year teaching A-Push, where I tried to be a little bit more traditional in how I taught the course, we're rushing through a lot of stuff. And we didn't have the time to really dive in and go build the skills, right? And A-Push is all about skills and kind of abstract reasoning and historical analysis. Every question, almost every question on the exam is a document analysis question. And it seemed really silly to me to spend all my time kind of teaching this basic content and not really teaching them how to analyze documents, analyze historical sources, and work within that system. So I felt that there wasn't enough time for me to through direct instruction, teach the content and teach the skills that had to go along with the content in order to be successful in the AP exam. So decided to flip the entire class. All lectures were recorded through VoiceThread and put into the learning management system, and that would be their homework for most nights. I also think that A-Push is kind of legendary as a super hard, punishing class with lots and lots of homework and lots of work. Not that I don't think my class is challenging, but I don't feel the need to give students an hour and a half or 2 hours of homework a night. I think that's silly. I think some A-Push teachers really like doing that, and I don't think that's really the right model, especially in 2020, the year we are now. Kids have a lot going on. They're busy. They have sports. They have activities. They have clubs. They have lives. They don't need to be in school for 8 hours and then spend 8 hours or 6 hours or 5 hours doing homework every night. So I really thought that this would be a way to cut down the amount of homework that I was giving and to bring much more of this kind of historical analysis and historical reasoning back into the classroom, right? Normally I would kind of set up with maybe lectures or some discussions in class and then readings and activities at night. Obviously, flip that model. And I think that the classroom, I really wanted to focus on making sure the classroom stayed student-centered and stayed collaborative. Those were my two big goals for the course. And you know, I've been teaching this for a number of years now. Really been trying to kind of hammer this out and smooth it out and make sure this works really well. I also like the flipped classroom because it builds a lot of the kind of soft skills that we're looking for, right? Students in their surveys and their responses to, you know, in their evaluations of my class, always talk about how help them with time management, help them kind of take ownership of their learning, right? If you're not watching the videos, things get pretty hard in class. If you're not there, if you don't know the content and the background of the documents and stuff we're trying to analyze, you can't get the right answers if you're not watching having the historical context for this. So many students, you know, figure this out, and my school is pretty traditional for the most part. Most teachers have a more traditional approach. It's a prep school. You know, a lot of students go to private elementary and middle schools, including my school's own middle school, and many of them haven't had a lot of flipped classroom experience or this. So there's a little bit of pushback in the beginning, but I think that, you know, between, you know, the relationships that I'm able to build with students, working with them one-on-one, the kind of the more engaging activities we're allowed to do. We have debates, we have arguments, we have discussions. We can do a lot more jigsaw stuff. We can really break down the kind of historical debates at the heart of a lot of this stuff. And I think that provides a much more interesting course than just kind of laying through the content, which I think a lot of A+ teachers kind of fall back on in an effort to make sure they get to everything. You know, I strive to make my classroom set up in teams so the students are working together, and it's very, very rare that there's ever even, you know, a PowerPoint slide on the board or on the projector. I really think that, you know, one of the great things you know, by moving to a flipped classroom model is able to put in more projects and more kind of research-based and kind of the real work of historians into the course. Initially, I was really scared. I was really scared to put a research project in or to kind of create things that weren't directly aligned with the assessments in AP, because I didn't want to overload them with work, and it wasn't really necessary per se on the AP exam to be able to write a research paper or to kind of work on these historical skills. But by flipping and kind of fine-tuning it, I've been able to free up a lot more time instructionally for students to complete a National History Day project and a podcasting assignment project. So my students, every student had to complete a National History Day, and we had it was their midterm grade. And I gave them time to work on it in class, and we could do research together, and we worked on research skills. We were trying, you know, finding primary source documents and analyzing them in a way that would work for their projects. Also had students create a class podcast, right? They called it Pushing History, and we'll talk about a little bit later, but they teamed up, they picked a topic, and they wrote a 10 to 15 minute podcast episode and then presented it. And I'll provide the link for that in here as well, right? So that the flipping actually frees up a lot of time. You can still cover the content that you need to cover for the AP exam, but you can also free up a lot of time in your course to create more engaging, more longer lasting, more authentic assessments and things that the kids really enjoy doing. And I got a lot of feedback on History Day. Builds great skills. It's research, it's collaboration, it's communication, it's public speaking. It's all the things that we really want our students to be able to do on a high level. Okay. So how I flipped my class, I used VoiceThread. That was what was kind of available to me through our institution. So I thought it was good. Students, I'd used YouTube in the past and recorded YouTube lectures. I didn't like the quality of those videos. And I think VoiceThread worked a little bit better because they're more interactive. Students all have their own account through our institution, so they could comment on it, they could create projects, so they could do jigsaws with it, and I'll have examples of that. But the students were able to they're able to ask questions on lectures. If they didn't understand something, they could put a comment in. And I think VoiceThread works really well as that tool. I used audio recording over the VoiceThreads as opposed to video, which both are capable of, because the video commenting on VoiceThread blocked too much of the slide, the PowerPoint slide that I uploaded there. and the kids got mad because they couldn't take notes on it. So I chose audio because that's what they wanted to do. But I think I'm starting to move towards PowerPoint presentations like this, where with a video, kind of small video recording in the corner. I'm a big fan of that, and I'll talk more later on about my current kind of work right now and teaching a summer class, and how I'm kind of taking everything I learned, distance learning, and flipping to make this successful. For accountability and retrieval practice, students will take a low stakes quiz, 5 points out of several hundred in a marking period, on the previous night's lectures in class. And I think this is important to kind of, one, build the practice that, like, if I assigned a VoiceThread, there's going to be a quiz later, you should be prepared for it. And it's, the VoiceThreads weren't that long. They were 15 minutes. They could watch them they had a VoiceThread app on their phones. A lot of them downloaded it, and they could watch the videos on their phone, maybe on their drive to school or their drive, on the bus ride from a game. So it was a lot more flexible, able to get stuff done for the course. And that the quizzing kind of built like a solid base of things to be prepared for, to know what to expect, solid routine, kind of, it works as a bell ringer in that, like, opening class and getting things started. And I generally chose open-ended kind of free response questions. I like kids to write. AP has a lot of writing assessments. Many times I'd use questions kind of based on a primary source document, or some kind of maybe short answer question from an AP exam, something that they would get them writing, get them thinking about what they had learned in the previous lecture. I also use OneNote as my kind of home base for everything else. I don't really print out anything except for tests, so pretty much everything is online in the class and through OneNote, which I really love. It's a great program, and I can distribute all the resources for the unit in the beginning of the unit. So everything's there, everything's loaded up. There's no more forgetting your homework, no more forgetting your packet, there's no more forgetting your documents, and it's right there. And you can put lots of different activities, graphic organizers, sketch notes. There's collaboration space in OneNote so they can work together on one activity. And I think that being able to have a classroom that could easily transition between different learning styles, different learning modalities, right? Kind of changing up, working differently, kind of analyzing different things, and basing the classroom around collaboration and discussion. There's a lot of talk about screen time, and it's negative effects on students, and they're addicted to their screens, and they're always on the thing where, people sometimes talk like, I'm online, I'm one-to-one, they're always on their computer in my class. But I think that my class actually has more interaction and more kind of that person-to-person communication and collaboration that is really necessary, and kind of it's an excellent skill to develop and have, is be able to work with other people. And I have my desk set up in a way that we can easily group off into groups of 2, 4, 6, 8. We can move. I constantly be able to move guys around. And these, more meaningful learning activities, I think, lead to a better retention of the content. Right? So I think they know the content better because they have to use it and apply it constantly, as opposed to just trying to memorize it. And they also have the classroom community is better, I think. And that's why I moved away from a self-paced model. I think it was harder to gain the classroom community where everyone's working kind of on the same project or the same problem at the same time. With the self-paced model, I like the communal aspect, the collaborative aspects that a flipped classroom can bring you, but kids got to be on the same page. So that's kind of why I've set it up that way. But also, one of the great advantages of putting all the resources, all the lectures are online, being all the readings, everything, and the schedule's there. So if kids know they have a away game and it's an hour away, I'm not going to go home late at night, they can do their work ahead of time. They can get ahead, they can catch up, they can rewatch lectures if they don't understand something, they can go back to it. I think it adds a lot of ability for students to really kind of learn at their own pace and individualize instruction for them. And they get a lot more one-on-one time with me in class. We I can talk to pretty much every student every day about what they're learning, what they're going on, bounce around in small groups, we can have these big class discussions, we can argue and debate. And I think that has led to a lot of really great conversations in our classroom. And my goal is to have kids still arguing about the historical thing we were discussing as they're leaving the classroom. That's when I know I've done a really good job with the lesson, is that 3 or 4 kids are still arguing with each other as they're leaving my classroom after the bell rings, right? So that's what I really want to happen. And setting up the flipped classroom really allows that to work, right? And it allows that space for debate. It allows that space for discussion that, by using OneNote, by using the VoiceThreads, I free up a lot of room to build the skills that are actually being assessed by the AP exam, not just the content. Okay, so here's some examples of my VoiceThread slides. So the first one, bottom left, just this kind of a slide, right? So it has the material. There's kind of the main points are on there, and I would discuss over the slide kind of what the big points are. But one of the things I really like VoiceThread, and I've used this a number of times as projects and presentations for students. So this is actually the 1930s international relations with Jigsaw was actually something I did during distance learning, going into kind of learning about World War II, kind of the world in the 1930s, kind of setting the stage for that, the context for that, right? So we had a bunch of assignments, a bunch of readings about a number of different kind of 1930s foreign policy things: Japanese invasion of Manchuria, rise of fashion in Europe, Italian invasion of Ethiopia. And students would read that, and they would have to answer these questions on the slide, and then rewatch the entire VoiceThread to kind of get the whole jigsaw and fill out a graphic organizer and have a discussion in online class afterwards. So I put on a slide here. You can see this group had Haile Selassie. So you have 3 students. They each are able to kind of answer and explain and talk about Haile Selassie's speech to the League of Nations, basically criticizing them for not helping him in his war against Italy. And then why, one great thing about VoiceThread was that you can have multiple students comment on one slide. It's easy once the slide's uploaded, anyone with an account can comment on it. And I think it really worked well in that sense to kind of drive student learning and student teaching each other as well. Something I really like to do and make happen. So VoiceThread allowed that to happen. We did Civil War battle project where they each got to battle the Civil War, created a slide, upload it, walked everyone through the battle. And it was one of those things where we're teaching the Civil War, you got a lot to teach, small amount of time. Something that students are really interested in is military history. I teach at all boys school. A lot of them like wars. When it comes to history class, gave them an opportunity to really dive into some military history and some things that would frankly be a waste of time and a certain level if I just lecture them. But the research they were able to do, the collaborative work they were able to do, and the kind of ability to just dive in and find that there's interesting stories from those battles and the effects on the broader war, I think is really important there, right? So VoiceThread's a great piece there that can really help drive student engagement and drive student collaboration, especially in a distance learning model. Okay, I think OneNote's great. I'm a big fan. Right, it provides a lot of different things, right? So students at my school all have Microsoft Surfaces, right? We're a big Microsoft school, and so we use a lot of the Microsoft stuff. So the Surfaces have a touch screen and a pen, right? Sketchnotes is one of the great things I do. I was trying to find some really good, funny things the kids have drawn. This one's really good. We're talking about populism in the end of the 19th century in U.S. history class, and they show a poor farmer with William Jennings Bryan's Cross of Gold, right? Very famous speech, political speech about populism and political issues that drive it, right? Complaining about the banks and the Congress and the railroads are impoverishing the farmers, and they're burdened by the gold standard. OneNote also has a great ability to kind of fill in graphic organizing. So as we have a class discussion or as students watch a lecture online, they're able to kind of fill out a graphic organizer that can summarize and clarify their thoughts, right? And they can use this to pens. I just put some blank ones in here, but OneNote has the ability to kind of put anything that you really want can go in there. It's blank space, it's open, so students can draw, they can create, and they can work together on filling these things out as reviews or as kind of retrieval practice, or as research. This was the 1210 chart there. It was the beginning of the Civil War battle project VoiceThread, where they could fill it out, kind of talk about what happened in the battle and the progress of the war. So there's lots of different things we can dive in. OneNote is very versatile. It's very creative. You can kind of do a lot. You can do lock and key, like escape room stuff with OneNote, which I've seen is really cool. There's lots of different things you can do with it. It's a great tool, and it's a great organizational tool for the students. It keeps everything right there, all their notes, all their homeworks, all the resources they need. You don't have to worry about printing stuff out. You don't have to worry about forgetting stuff or not having stuff prepared, and you can distribute it all right to them. So I'm a big fan of OneNote. I set my whole class up basically around it, and I think it helps keep things organized, keep things on pace, and sets your class up for a good success and to stay on target, right, and to stay on pace for the AP exam. That's another really important thing with AP is that the test date doesn't move, so you got to make sure you're covering the content and getting and moving along at the right pace to make sure that you can have enough time to review and assess before they take the final exam. Okay. There's a schedule. I put the schedule in OneNote, and you can see here I have all my units organized through here in OneNote. Each unit has a schedule similar to the one being displayed here, and a day-by-day breakdown of all the resources and activities and readings students might need to do or have done. And a lot of these turn into jigsaws. They'll turn into kind of sometimes students will create questions on them. We can do lots of different literacy strategies here. All right, it sets you up for really good instruction and also flexible instruction. You can find what works, find what engages your students, and kind of keep working and teaching that way, right? And I think it helps set up a much more collaborative environment for the AP classroom. Okay. Here's examples of student work that guys done. This year, as their midterm exam, they completed a National History Day project in lieu of that exam. And we took the gym, took it over during one of our midterm days, and all the students had to complete a project in my class in a couple other history courses in the school. We set up. They had to talk to judges. They were scored, and the winners of our in school present History Day contest moved on to the county level ones. And the guys got really into it. They had to talk about their project, talk about their research. They did a really awesome job across the board. I was really impressed. And I think it's one of those examples where this was something that I didn't do. I felt like I didn't have enough time to do beforehand, because it's a big investment in time in the course, whether you got to give them class time for research, you got to give them class time to work together on it, you got to give them class time to put it together, ask you questions, right? It's a long-term project and it takes a lot of work. So something I was really kind of hesitant to do. I'd done it in high school, I'd seen it before. I really liked the project, but I didn't think I could fit it in. Flipping the APUSH class allowed the time for this to happen. That middle picture there is the first half of the podcast that my guys created. It's called APUSHing History. They named it, and they each picked a separate topic for every week. They kind of went along with kind of broadly what we were studying in our course at the time. Found something that really interested them, something they really wanted to dive into, and they created a 10 to 15 minute podcast episode based on that. They worked with me, collaborated, they worked together, they wrote a script, they got approved, and then they went and recorded it, and they did a really, really excellent job. I'm really impressed with what they put together, and they picked a lot of really great topics, and they did a really good job investigating and researching. And I think both of these projects are really good for the students in the AP class, especially thinking about, building this historical skills that the course really kind of focuses on. You have to do a lot of primary source analysis here. You have to do a lot of research. you got to find the materials and put a coherent narrative around them, which is a lot of times what you're doing, especially the very famous AP exam, AP US exam assessment is the DBQ, which is a lot of what you're doing there. So I think the students really appreciated this, and they were able to really, I think, help prepare them. One, in that it definitely helped prepare them for the AP exam, and two, it gave them a public-facing kind of celebration of their work and of their effort in the course. And the guys loved it. It went really well, and I'm really looking forward to our next year's History Day competition. Okay, so one of the things that I think kind of crystallized what I was doing and why it was so valuable was because of the school closures due to COVID, right? I think this was a really disruptive event, and it was really hard on a lot of school districts, a lot of students, a lot of guys, a lot of different scenarios, and they lost any sense of normalcy and community that they got from school. And I thought that my class kind of was able to fit that crisis a little bit better, right? We were able to respond, at least in my course, because, and again, there's privileges of a one-to-one school. The guys already had technology. They already kind of were familiar with all the things that were going on. But I already had everything recorded. We already had the norms established for kind of recorded lectures and that kind of how online classroom would work. And we were able to kind of keep going, right? Which I think we didn't really lose any time in the course because we have the lectures recorded and we keep moving, and it was as minor of disruption as I think could have been. One of the great things that I really like about distance learning is I think what students really miss about school is not our lectures and not necessarily learning. They miss the community, they miss hanging out with their friends, they miss talking to each other. The flipped model allowed distance learning to also try to be collaborative and try to work, right? We had Microsoft Teams and VoiceThread. Students completed kind of activities where they had to work together to create finished products. They had to do lectures, they had to do recordings, they had to do, they made like fake radio announcements from the 1930s, all things that they could do together, and they would have to collaborate with, with the AP exam and review. We're able to kind of break up guys and teams through the team's channels and split them up and have them working with each other in different groups every class period to work together, review, to talk about things. And the course was able to, I think, hopefully keep some sense of normalcy, some sense of community that was probably hard to hold, I think, across the board. So I think that the flipped model definitely helps out when schools are closed and you're at home, which we're looking at an uncertain fall and winter and next school year. Being able to kind of maintain continuity of learning is going to be really important. Kids got to learn, and we have to adapt to the circumstances as best we can. And I think that flipping can really help smooth out these transitions and these disruptions as much as possible. Not that we can totally go back. Is that it's not as good, I don't think, but we gotta try to provide the best education that we can for our students. Okay, Teams is great. I'm actually teaching a Teams course this summer, all online to some students with a summer class that I normally teach in person, but here we are. So one of the things I've really done is really dived into the Microsoft tools for this, right? Teams is great. You can put all your resources. You can have video calls. You have different breakout groups. You set up these channels for the groups that have meetings in. I think it's worked pretty well. The guys really enjoyed the system. The guys already have it. It's already part of the institution, and it kind of seamlessly fits into with OneNote. The class notebook can be uploaded into a team, so everything kind of is right there and held for you. So in the summer class I'm teaching, I've decided to record PowerPoint slides through PowerPoint and then upload them to Microsoft Stream and then share them in the team. So the guys are getting their lectures all flipped, distance learning, kind of online learning. They get their readings. I can give them directions through OneNote, and then we can have discussions and work together collaboratively in class, which I think is really important. And again, trying to build community in online. Schools might start in distance learning or some kind of hybrid model. It's going to be tough to build community in a classroom. And I think that's really important to kind of build that shared common, sense of purpose in your room, in your class, and then, and you're not going to do that by lecturing. You're not going to do that by sharing PowerPoint screens over Zoom or Teams or, whatever it is, or I think it's going to be pretty hard to do that. So I think, setting up a class where more collaborative work can work and more time is spent kind of very focused on discussion and, being together and spending time and really diving into issues, I think can create a much better environment and much better relationships between you and your students. Okay. Wanted to share some of the kind of responses, that students really enjoyed how collaborative it was, how the different tools work together, how the students were allowed to kind of engage more freely in the content and kind of focus on the things that they're really interested in, whether it was History Day, whether it was a podcast. It kind of allowed students to really find their passion in history, and that's what I was really hoping. I wanted them to feel more independent. I wanted them to feel more collaborative, more engaged. I wanted to kind of develop a sense of internal motivation for the course, and that's really the goal. And I think that, if you look at some of the response that I got to my class surveys, I really think students really enjoyed how it went and how it worked. And that makes a big difference in, especially keeping that class together in distance learning or virtual learning. I think it was really important and really helped. All right, so big things I'm planning on doing. Stream is great because you can embed a Microsoft form into the video, which I think is really great, and I've been using it in the Chinese history course I've been teaching online. Is you have the direct retrieval practice right there, and you also have accountability to watching the videos. And I think that's kind of a big fear a lot of teachers have about flipping is, like, are the kids even going to watch it? And it gives them something they have to do when they watch the video. And the video is not that long. If it's under 10-15 minutes, you might as well watch it to answer the questions and hold that accountability, right? It also builds that retrieval practice where they have to listen to something and kind of remember it right away. I think something that's really important for kind of good pedagogy and making sure guys are mastering the content. I did voice in VoiceThread because of the kind of technical issue that the video would block a lot of the text on the videos, on the slides. But I think video is more engaging. That's what students told me. They like it more to see the teacher teach. So the PowerPoint way of presenting, which is how I made this presentation, I think is better. And I think I'm going to start redoing a lot of my lectures next year with this tool so that I can embed forms in there, so that it's video recording, aligns a little bit better with the curriculum I want to teach. And my big thing is the uncertainty of next year and what it's going to look like, and if we're going back and how we're going back, and hybrid versus full school versus distance learning. Being comfortable with some level of flipped classroom or some level of using technology to record and kind of push lessons to students not in your classroom, it's going to be a really valuable thing to do. Okay. Thank you guys very much for watching my video and attending my session. I'm looking forward to our Twitter chat on the 12th.